Most people think that partnerships start in a boardroom or maybe when you're out networking, you meet people and you have a connection and you start partnerships. But sometimes they start maybe on an airplane where you meet someone sitting next to you, or perhaps you're out traveling doing something that you absolutely love and you meet the right people. So today's conversation is going to be about how you take these connections from wherever you may be in the world, and you might form a partnership from those unusual situations. So it's not always in the boardroom or out with the people that you know. And we're going to talk about purpose and what's possible when you merge your passion with the right people. So today's guest is Cami Parker. Let me tell you a little bit about Cami. Cami is right there. It's like, yay. I met her online through Facebook. My sister sent me a link and said, you need to check her out. She's doing some pretty cool stuff and doing some traveling, and this might be something you're interested in. And so we had a conversation, and I just fell in love with Cami and what she's doing. So let me tell you, she considers herself the empowerment expert, and she's a cancer survivor. She's a retired educator, a mom, a grandma. I remember I'm a grandmother too, so I know about that. She has dedicated her life to helping others rise into freedom and purpose and possibility. I love that. So, after spending years of working on a global level to help rescue and support children out of trafficking situations, she turned her focus towards empowering entire communities. I'm saying entire communities, not just one person, through sustainable and heart centered actions. She is the founder of the company called Expedition Global. It's a travel company, but it's a little different. They create meaningful trips that are designed to change lives, not just for the people that are attending and traveling, but also the people that are in these different locations, how it impacts them. And they're always in these different countries, and they give them education. There's connections that are formed. And she helps these communities grow stronger by helping these individuals reconnect with what matters most. So she believes that when people experience the world with intention, both they and the world are changed for the better. Don't you just love that? So welcome, Cami, to our show today.
Thank you for having me. That was a perfect introduction. Thank you.
You're so welcome. So I fell in love with what you were doing, and I realized that, okay, I know that you travel and that's your business, Expedition Global, but let's go back a little bit to before you started Global Expeditions. What You weren't doing this as a business, you were just traveling in general. So what pulled you towards this?
Yeah, so in 2015, I was a, fifth grade teacher teaching math. And I was diagnosed with cancer. And my oldest son at the time was a senior in high school. And I also had a 5-year-old daughter. And it, I was teaching school. It was a parent teacher conference week. And my phone was ringing and I didn't answer it for a couple days. And I realized this one number had kept calling me and kept calling me. And so I picked it up on my lunch break, and it was my OBGYN doctor that I had gone into for some things. And he said, I am so sorry to tell you this over the phone. I've been trying to reach you. And I said, well, I'm sorry. I was stuck in parent teacher conferences. I didn't answer my phone. And he said, I've got to tell you this. I'm in between deliveries. I got to tell you this now. You have cancer. I thought you were going to be okay, but you're not. And we believe your numbers are so high that it's metastasized throughout your body. Now, my students are out at lunch recess, and I'm standing in my classroom. I can tell you exactly where I was, the feelings. And that day, I walked down to my principal's office, took my keys off my neck, and was like, I have cancer. I can't talk. I was just sobbing hysterically, right? And I spent some time talking to God, like, wow, I'm going to meet Jesus in a minute or whatever's after this life. I guess nobody for sure knows. I don't know. But I changed, like I could feel physically changing. And I had been teaching school for 15 years. I loved what I was doing, love students, love all of that. But I changed with the diagnosis with cancer. And thank God I didn't even have to get through chemo. I just went through surgery and stuff. But that experience alone, I remember praying, like, help me live long enough to see my son graduate. Help me live long enough to see my daughter go into kindergarten, please. And I had this feeling of like, all the stuff I used to care about, I thought mattered, didn't matter at all anymore. It didn't matter. And so when I figured out that I was cancer free, went through, some things up at Huntsman's in Utah, and I realized that I couldn't keep doing, whether I had another 100 years left on life or my lease on life was 10 more minutes. I wanted to do something that mattered because when that diagnosis came, I was like, I got to use every minute to actually do something. I was stuck in this mind numbing rabbit wheel for what? And so I'll tell you a quick little story. My girlfriends were like, we're going to take you on the Price is Right. Let's go do something fun. So we went on the Price is Right. I won some trips. And on my trip in Puerto Vallarta, I'm sitting on the beach and I'm watching this little boy come up and sell chiclets to me, right? And it's just the early morning. I had been going through, cancer. I'm writing in my journal. And he asked me if I wanted to buy chiclets. And I thought my children have never had to buy, sell something. And then at the end of the day, we come together and say, what are we going to eat tonight? And I thought in that moment, can I help kids like him? And so in that trip, I was like, where's the schools around here? As a teacher, you can't help but like want to know. So I went to a little school in Mexico and was like, how can I help you guys? Well, in that trip, I sat down and I thought, can just like a regular old person from the States go do something in other countries, build schools, help kids like this kid, like learn to read? Because then if he could read, he could do more stuff. Like, is that a thing? And so I looked up, I Googled the most philanthropic attorney. And my dear friend was like, oh my gosh, I know him. And by the grace of God himself, I got in on an appointment with that guy as soon as I got back from Mexico. And I said, hey, you know what? His name's Travis Segmiller. He's amazing. I'm, dirty, all hippie looking weird. I come in from Mexico right to the attorney's office. Like I had this new found, what the heck am I doing with my life? And I go into his office and I'm sitting in front of all these super fancy attorneys in this huge boardroom. And I'm like, hey, I'm a teacher. I have this terrible idea. Can I go to other countries and actually help or not? Is this something that you're like, heck no, this is like a legal nightmare? And he said, oh my gosh, I just got off the phone with my buddy in Haiti. And he said, hey, if anyone come across, he used to work with him in Washington, D.C. And he said, if anyone comes across your desk that could maybe come out here and help us. I was really passionate about bringing books and literacy and stuff. He's like, some of these kids never leave this orphanage. If they had books or something, and he goes, you guys are saying the same sentence. So I said, great, give me his number. And with that connection, like we're talking about connections today, with that connection, I jumped on a plane by myself with a backpack on and went to the country of Haiti. I would not suggest anyone ever do that. However, I was this weird lease on life thinking, well, if cancer didn't kill me, I'll be fine. Here I go. It was very scary.
Ignorance is
Um,
bliss.
I'm like, it's exactly what happened. And I'm wandering through the streets of Port-au-Prince by myself, making a lot of amazing connections. But I went to the school and the orphanage fed into that school. And that school was the most brilliant, wonderful, amazing school I've ever seen in any of these other countries. A lot of good people work there. But what I didn't realize was going to happen was just like in my classroom or just like at home, I want to know what's going on with the kids. I at the orphanage wanted to know what their story was. And I connected with quite a few kids. There was 250 children at this orphanage. And that many of them were, unclothed, hungry, crying. And I made friends with the social workers that were in that area and wondering their stories and how can I help? I'm going to go home and get some people and bring them back. I'm going to go home and get some people. So I started doing that. But many of their stories were these children had been trafficked, brought from the Dominican Republic over here, or similar stories, coming across the Haitian Haiti border there. And it changed. That again was a change for me. And so my second trip back, I came back home to Utah, called everybody I know, my teacher friends, doctor friends, everyone. And I started a nonprofit. Like, we got to go feed these kids. But what changed me was my second trip there. I brought doctors there and we went out to some of the villages that are hours away. And I won't really like say all the details because of what happened, but we ended up doing a medical clinic and I ended up rescuing a 2-year-old baby from human trafficking and her 15-year-old mom. And yeah, the 2-year-old baby looks much like a 9-month-old baby. And I still have their picture. I hold it, it's very dear to my heart. But because of my connections I had made with the social workers and stuff, and I was out there in the country, I said, this is what we're looking at. I got 30 Haitian dudes staring down her neck right now. I can't just take this girl, but this poor baby needs emergent medical care. It was absolutely the most heart-wrenching thing you've ever witnessed. And I thought, okay, this is why I was saved from cancer. I was supposed to help this baby and this mama. But through the grapevine, how sometimes connections happen with just like here's a text, hey, you might want to connect with this lady just like with you and me. It was like, okay, I'm here on the top of a mountain. Thank goodness we have this satellite and we got some service. And they're like, oh my gosh, there is the village lady that can get her out. We're going to send her to the malnutrition clinic in
How safe
Port-au-Prince.
were you doing all of this?
Not, not. So
I'm
I'm
just
saying,
thinking guns are
don't do
everywhere
this.
and
Not safe, not. But I mean, I say that jokingly, but we did make connections with the locals and they accompanied us and we grew to love them. So we were actually safer than it might sound. But when you retrospect and look back, you think, wow, okay. And so over the years, as I kept traveling and working in the human trafficking world, I took way more precautions than I did in the beginning. I mean, that was just silly. But like you said, ignorance is bliss. And so that first case, we had to really kind of like juggle and be like, okay, you're going here, you're telling her this, we're getting her to this safety, and make sure that she doesn't get her life taken from her because she's trying to feed her baby. So it's just that was, like, one of the connections I wanted to talk about is just you just never know. Something bigger could be going on in the background, or you could be an answer to someone's plea, or just, you never know. So
when
always listen to those little gut
right.
instincts.
I always talk about listen to your instincts. They're telling you something, you should listen. So, when did there come a point when you realized there's something bigger here than just this one 2-year-old and the mom, and there's so many more, and how did that happen? Was there an aha moment?
S Yeah, the aha moment was originally when I very first went to the first orphanage, and, I talked to the guy in DC. He's like, "Oh, yeah, we got an orphanage there. Go see it. Here's this guy. He's gonna meet you at the gate." And I didn't think it was gonna be what it was. Now, if anyone that's listening's ever gone to Port-au-Prince or to Croix-des-Bouquets, especially the area I was in, you probably know the orphanage and you know the school I'm referring to. I had no idea what was going to happen. They opened this big gate, and to see a sea of kids that were hungry and naked and tired and crying, that was my first aha moment. I realized it was bigger then. And then going out to the village, it was like, okay, I'm walking out. Let me tell you how far away we were. This is
Were you
how
alone? Were you alone?
I brought some friends with me from the States. And then my friends from the school, they went with us out there too. And so I had a lot of, I mean, my Aunt Cart really does live in Haiti, but I had a lot of Haitians with me helping us. But when we were hiking, because we're going out to the village that people haven't even heard of this thing, we're walking and hiking. There was a kid on the top of the mountain and he had a Star Wars shirt on. And we were like, we like Star Wars. That's awesome. He had no idea what it was. So it's like,
It was a
oh,
shirt.
he didn't know. I never heard of Star Wars. So it's like when I say we were in the middle of nowhere, it's like, oh, honey, we were in the middle of nowhere. But those authentic relationships say there's no language. It's just like, you are enough. I love you. And then they pour in more to me. And so what I ended up doing was working as an educator. My brain is like, research, what's going on here? And I was so captured by these kids' stories in the orphanage and like, how can we get them out of here and into school? And having the kids at the schools not be able to attend if they don't have their own uniforms, if they don't have their own stuff. So we started supporting a village sewing school so that they could sew uniforms for the kids. And then I provide teacher salaries for 5 different villages in Haiti because if there's no teacher showing up, there's nowhere for the
How
kids
did
to
you
go. Right?
get the money for the teachers, to pay teachers?
Yeah, so I started a nonprofit organization, Global Education Philanthropists, which my story it kind of melts in with Expedition Global, but we started a nonprofit and just badgered everybody we know. Hey, like if you send us $1, I'll show you the dollar buying a sandwich. Like or organically going back. And so I spent a lot of time in the Caribbean working on who can I find like who can help me help these kids and learning cases, learning this I thought at the time that human trafficking was only isolated to the area my brain was wrapped up in the Caribbean. And so I ended up working in the Caribbean, getting quite the reputation of working with law enforcement, social workers, anybody that could help me get resources to these children and to these moms. And then I went back to so kind of going back to teaching and that my brain cognitively couldn't really adjust very well. So in all of my teaching breaks, I would go to Haiti or I'd go to the Dominican Republic and just bring anybody that wasn't going to sound my voice to help me serve these people. We were in refugee camps. We were just doing anything we could. But then they'd go back to their people and be like, hey, we need $35 for this lady's uniform. Can you help us? It was like totally one of the things like people just texting and connecting, exactly like what this podcast is about. And it helps like spread a snowball of like empowering each other. And then hopefully coming back home and being just a little kinder to not only yourself, but to your family and to your kids, you know? And then I brought my kids to Haiti. And that was definitely one of the aha moments for me was letting them work in the orphanages with me, seeing the kids. And I thought, I want all of moms and dads to get this experience with their kids. We were home after our trip to Haiti one summer afternoon, and my high school kid turns to me and says, Mom, I'm so glad we have food. And I said, oh, I am too. Because the aha of like, we are really blessed. And I hope that so and so that we met in Haiti is doing okay today. And that is the actual essence of what I do at Expedition Global. It's
Yeah.
just to help people experience that. It doesn't have to be in Haiti. It doesn't have to be sleeping in a mosquito net, scary, whatever, and you're afraid you're going to get malaria. It's long since evolved into a company where you can travel with us. But my husband and I have lived in Central America the last few years, still working in the anti trafficking efforts. My husband trains law enforcement on investigations for trafficking, and we still work daily in the fight. And so now, over the years, we collaborate with nonprofits that live in these countries that are there long after we leave. We work from the government level down because we have a reputation of helping people. And literally, the give back piece that anyone that goes with us is doing is just something that they were asking us to do. So many times people go to these villages like, this is what you need, and they don't really need that. Like, so we work really hard to meet critical needs of villagers, and we put people in safe places.
This is very interesting. I find that, a lot of people, they're passionate about something and they're doing things that they love, but they go, "Oh, I really love," like, even like I'm into the stray pets and donating to shelters and that type of thing. But many people, they might donate a little here and there, but they never take it any further than that. So what made you really lean into these relationships instead of just letting it stay casual? You really leaned into it. What was it in you that said, "No, I have to do more?"
It was one meeting who I believe is my son, who still lives in Haiti. His name's Mackinson. Seeing his story, him and his sister's story, and that baby, it literally was so heart-wrenching. I thought, and I used to get so angry, like, why isn't everyone as fired up about this as I am? But that's my own experience, right? I literally went home, quit my job, and was like, this is what I'm doing now. But it was because of the experience, I believe, that cancer was a blessing for me. I really came to a point where I was thankful for that trial or whatever you wanna call it, but I'm actually very grateful that I was chosen by whatever to get cancer because it made me stop and, like, look at myself, and so every day I even still think, "What are you doing?" Like, the experience I thought I was toast, dude. I thought I was done. I thought I was meeting Jesus in 20 minutes. I thought that was it, and so to get another chance, and so I used to go on all the trips, and then I'm like, "That's not doing any good, like, other people need to experience this also." And so now it's like I have teams in all of these countries. We have teams out all of the time serving and helping, and then the travelers that come get to just experience it and, like, feel it too, because you can't do all of it. You can't quit your job and go feed orphans forever. So you have to just kind of go when you can or help in your own community. But that was really what changed me, I think, was the blessing of cancer.
So, you work closely with you connect with the nonprofits in the different places where you travel, and you're meeting women that are coming from unimaginable circumstances, obviously. So, how do you begin to build that trust, not just with the nonprofits that you're working with, but the actual people that you're serving when you get there?
Yeah,
'Cause they've
so
been trusting people
they don't trust.
that broke them. They don't trust anybody, I wouldn't think.
Right. My husband's job specifically kind of helps us be positioned in a place of, like I was saying, up at the top with the governments.
Right.
And so the nonprofits that we know there, we have worked with side by side with rescues, with arrests, with all of that. And then additionally, to gain the trust, it comes through the people that live there. So we have those partnerships with, like, for example, Kavod International. They're one of the nonprofits in Belize. They're there, they've been there for 20 years. They're rolling up their sleeves, they're doing ministries, they're just there all the time helping. And so we relied on their advice of like, hey, we have this lady that's in hiding from Honduras. And so the Belizeans trust the people that are there. So they trust our team. And so even
Yeah.
when you go on a trip, we have meetings leading up because we're super, it's kind of scary actually to open up our people to people I may not know. And so leading up to a trip, it's like everyone's super safe, but just know this person's experience and just be carefully loving when you get to interact with people. But then what happened with me was I was working in the Caribbean for so long and I quit my job. And then my friend in Utah, her daughter was trafficked. And she said, "Hey, we're having a fundraiser. Could you come speak?" And I'm thinking, no, people aren't trafficked in Utah. And so I learned her story and her daughter, we were not far from Las Vegas, ended up getting, she had some trouble at school and she went with her friends to Vegas and it was literally like what you might possibly think of a classic trafficking case. And so I started working in the States at that stage. And then I have a very good reputation within the survivor community in the United States. So to answer your question, like there's different nonprofits even in the States that work with survivors in the States and they have bad reputation. There's nonprofits internationally that have good and bad reputations.
Yeah.
But I worked for 2 years going, for lack of a better word, undercover in San Diego, rescuing girls out of trafficking scenarios just to help them. Again, same thing, learned a lot of lessons, shouldn't have done a lot of things I did. But so now I feel like being deep in the human trafficking, fighting for about 7 years, my mama heart is ready to just like allow people to go serve and love. The impact we've had in these villages with women's empowerment, with give providing scholarships so they can have a paradigm shift of like not selling themselves to buy diapers, using real, I believe education is the only way to change anything. So in
Yes.
the States, my nonprofit would provide scholarships for someone to go to cosmetology school or
And I want to get
anything like
into that in
that.
just a second. I want to get into some of the things that these women are actually doing in just a
Yeah.
second. But, for the women who are in the villages that you serve, you've seen a lot of changes in them.
Yeah.
So let's talk a little bit about that. It's like when you explained it to me. So for our audience who's listening here, I want them to understand that you've grown this into a business, which is an incredible business because I heard about you and it was like, oh, travel to Belize, travel to Ireland, travel to Costa Rica, but it's with a purpose. So people can join your small groups and they go and they serve. So tell us a little bit about Expedition Global. So you get small groups, I guess they're women, and I know that you were reaching out for you tell me if I'm telling it wrong, that when they get there, these women are learning real job skills, learning how to start businesses. So you look for women maybe over here in the States that are entrepreneurs, that are leaders, that are creatives that can really help teach and educate these women in some skills. So let's go down this road just a little bit about what these
Sure.
expeditions are like when you gather some people together and we go to Haiti or I don't know if Haiti's one you but wherever you go to Belize. I know you've got one coming up in Belize in March. So tell us a little bit about what if somebody wanted to go on one of these, what they're going to expect is going to happen.
Yeah, absolutely. So this specific trip that's coming up, I started about 5 years ago when I was working with an orphanage in Belize, and the Women and Children Family Services director in the area said, these ladies could really benefit from some entrepreneurial women's empowerment courses. So I did the same dang thing I did in Haiti and the Dominican Republic and Costa Rica, just called people and said, "Can you come with me? I don't know. You know what? You do social media. Can you teach a social media class? You do this." And it was sitting down with the people in country and said, "What would you need?" Well, this is the 5th year it's been going, and so this is a very specific trip. So I've been watching these girls, some of their stories, domestic violence is usually almost 100% of the time in this scenario, human trafficking, other things that just kind of come with different cultural things happening in, like, poverty villages and things, but I don't really like to use the word poverty, but
But it is what it is.
underserved locations in the world. And so what we've noticed is, some of these women, we have a baker that started a bakery since we started. She's just blown up. We have a gal that sews bags for my travelers. We have a couple ladies that make all of our meals. And so each part of your trip is providing a job for someone that wouldn't otherwise have one because I watched what happens when they don't have a way to provide for their children. And so and travelers may not even notice it, but I bring corporate teams down here or, on these trips. We bring retreat owners, leaders. We've had some companies use it for a initiative for their sales teams. Every Christmas, I have enormous floods of families that come as a family and do a Christmas give back. And so To balance it out, we've created just a few days of excursions. And so, even excursions, it's like you can go through an online link or you can go through this guy that we know it has 3 kids by himself and he's amazing tour guide. Use this guy. So, it's very organically trying to help the people in the country that live there. So, whether you're like a group of 50 or you're a solo traveler that jumps on, or you're like, you just bring your kids to experience it, we encourage the tourism to be supported because those areas really need that. And then we do a couple days of building a school, dental clinics, medical clinics. It just depends on which trip you're on. But the women's empowerment trip is really dear to my heart because I've watched the impact grow. And so the women that come with us, we do a WhatsApp for the year next year and be like, hey girls, and we just kind of support each other, send each other business tools, podcasts to listen to this, try that. And I realized that it doesn't matter what village you're in, whether you're in Guatemala or Costa Rica, Belize, we actually are all a lot more alike than you think. Entrepreneurship can sometimes be lonely. And so it's like, okay, call a girlfriend, go to coffee, ask her what she's doing with her business, see how you can support her. They're dealing with the same things we are. And so that the women's empowerment trip is once a year to Belize, but we also do Costa Rica and Kenya. And then the Ireland piece, I filmed a documentary on human trafficking because I was so fascinated with how did it happen in Haiti? How did it happen to my friend in Utah? And then I started doing these Super Bowl stings every time there's a Super Bowl and collaborating with nonprofits in the States because every time there's a large sporting event, the human trafficking goes through the roof. And so I started noticing all of these pieces where trafficking moved online. So we're like the advent of the COVID, right? Changed the way we do everything and changed the way people buy people. And so I went on a research project after Haiti, after US, on a global scale, and I interviewed young people because I want the young people to have the information. And I said, when is the first time you saw pornography? When's the first time maybe a bad guy talked to you online? Like, I want you guys to have a voice. Like, what's happening out there? Are you okay? I spent a couple years in Ireland filming with a really cool, amazing crew. And so I found some other nonprofits there. And I love Ireland. So we're adding Ireland back in. And so, we'll tour, but we'll spend a little bit of time just giving back and hanging out with some of the locals. And that's the essence of the company is you'll have an awesome trip, but you're not just sitting on the beach going, you are, yes, you do have time sitting on the beach, but you're also getting that next level of like, how am I helping that kid that just tried to sell me chiclets? Like for real, is your mom okay? Do you need something? And so we have the barriers and safety things in place so that people can actually like commune and connect with people. Like I had a group from Ohio. They're like, can we just pray with people? Sure. Like
So they're going there, if you wanna go on one of these trips, you can go alone, solo,
mhm,
you can get your own group together, you can go with your family, and you go with the Expedition Global, you go to the hotel or wherever they're staying, the resort, because they are resorts, and,
mhm.
from what I understand, and you have lots of free time, but also there is the portion of it where you're actually going and helping these people who need the help. They need the education, they need some skills, and they wanna talk and learn from these people who are coming here to travel. So there's education and fun vacation, so it's a
Yeah.
combination. Is that about right?
That's about right, and sometimes the outreach might be just as, like, you're feeding homeless kids for an afternoon, and the another afternoon, you as a team are painting an orphanage or a school, and, it's that part is, it's not work, it's so much fun.
Is there a story that you can share that things of you might be caught catching you off guard here, where you saw that a group came in, shared their knowledge, and one of the people turned that knowledge into some income, and you saw that unfold?
Oh, absolutely, absolutely. We have a multitude. You can go to our Facebook page, we are Expedition Global, and you can see the list of ladies that we have mentored, and, you can see them in their little shop selling stuff and they'll tell you their testimony or whatever of it is like, thank you. I was able to work on, collaboration over competition. And now I work with another bakery in town. We have one gal that she closed her pie shop and she didn't want to do it. And we're like, well, we're your first customer. So now she's back up selling pies. So, yes. And I think the main piece that I love too is it doesn't matter what group, the connections you make with the people in those countries and with each other is so much more intense than it would be if you just, went to Expedia, went to a hotel and went and sat at the thing. You're
Right.
sitting there going, I think there's got to be something more we could be doing. Yes, it's fun to zip line and scuba dive and stuff. We're doing that. But also, are there any homeless kids that are hungry? Let's go help them too. So,
That's right. So, many women they feel called to do something they love, but they don't really see a way to turn it into a business, whereas you did. So, what's something you would say to that woman who feels the pull, but they haven't really acted yet on that passion?
I would say the reason you feel that pull is because that's what you're supposed to do. And if you're waiting to be ready, you're never going to be, quote, ready. And your decision to just start is enough and just do the next right thing. Just start. None of us know what the heck we're doing. Nobody knows. They're just doing the next right thing. And so
It reminds me of when people ask me, "How do you write a book?" It's like, "I've got these ideas." I go, "Just do a dump on the computer. Just start."
just start. And it seems so scary, like, how is it all going to happen? The hows don't, as bonkers as it sounds, the hows don't all necessarily matter. But the reason that you feel drawn to do something is because you're supposed to.
Yeah, that's great advice, Cami.
Don't waste any time in case you get cancer. We don't,
You don't have to wait for that. Just start now, right? Even if
just
it's
start
just a
now.
little. So,
Even if it doesn't make sense. And you know what? The trick is always biting off more than you can chew and just keep chewing.
yeah. That I used to do, and now I don't do that anymore, but I
Get
used
it
to.
right. That's for sure.
I'm learning not to do that, but
That's
okay,
so
if you can
funny.
handle, that's good. I When I was young,
Maybe
I
for
could
a
do that.
while, but
Yeah,
that's right.
but if you can do it while you're younger and while you have the energy to chew,
Go chew, but just start.
but just start. So, if someone out there wants to learn more about your trips, maybe they're interested in joining you or they have resources for you, but hopefully they'd like to join you on your next trip to Belize or Costa Rica or Kenya. So, how can they reach you to learn more about your company and what you they can do to join you?
Yeah, they just go to expeditionglobal.com, click on request a catalog, and it'll have you fill out your information, and it'll be me and my team sending you a catalog. We'll text and call you, say, hey, here's what we have going on. You can find me personally on TikTok, YouTube, Instagram, Facebook at the Cami Parker, or you can find us. We are Expedition Global, and you can see all the stories that we were kind of just talking about, and then you can decide, hey, I want to bring my own company, or I want to bring my sisters. And usually, what I do when I find out someone wants to come is I call my whole team and country and say, hey, I got a doctor, I got a nurse, I got a healer, I got a sound bath lady, I got this, and they're like, okay, let's use all of their skills. So there's always room for someone to come help.
That's awesome. So, there you go. Go to her Facebook's page, check her out. I think the next one is Belize. It's on March the 20th through the 25th, if I'm not mistaken.
Yep,
So it's if there's still some openings until they're filled, you can go to Belize in just a
yep.
couple of months. So I have one last question. It's a signature question I ask everybody who goes on to this podcast because we're called Success Through Connections because it's all about connections. So my question is, can you share an opportunity, share a story basically that happened to you? Basically, it's an opportunity that presented itself to you because of some connection that you had.
Yeah, so I shared a few throughout the podcast already.
Hmm.
But another one that came to mind was I had a good friend that was in marketing, and she connected me with the gal in her group, and it was on Instagram, just kind of like you and I had met. And she was a documentarian in Ireland, and she reached out and said, I'm fascinated with what you're doing in human trafficking. I would love to make a movie about this for what you're doing. And that connection of someone saying, hey, here's another woman in business, like you two connect. I did the same thing. I jumped on a plane and went to Ireland and met some of the most amazing people, and then watched the connections that they opened me up to. And it just kind of unfolded. And now we're getting ready to close up the documentary and get it out. So there's, if you feel a need to connect two people, just do it. It might feel awkward, but do it. It changed my life with those two connecting me.
That's an awesome story. So before we close today, I want to remind everyone to make sure you hit that subscribe button. I believe it's probably on the bottom right, but wherever it is on this podcast while we're on the video anyway, please remember to subscribe and share it with your friends. Remember that connections are not made in isolation and they are today's currency. Without connections, you're nowhere. You got to have those connections. Connections are your power move. So I'm Zelda Greenberg, your host of Success Through Connections. And until next week, I'll see you later. Keep making those connections.